We out hard on the yard, man. That boy Bo Jackson, that's a real bully right there. We had a lot of discussion the last few days, man. Raises Edge, Gotti, Dax. We're gonna get into it, man. We're gonna have a good discussion on live this week. But today, I wanted to talk about inbreeding, line breeding, and outcrossing. Inbreeding, line breeding, and outcrossing. What is breeding type? Because what we are doing here is building a bloodline, and we are building a bloodline, and we are basing it off of Bo Jackson, which is a line breeding is what we're doing. So what I consider type is half sibling. I don't go farther than what a half sibling is. This girl finds something to chew every time right there. I don't know what she's chewing on. Come on, buddy. Now this girl here, her dad is Bo Jackson. And Domino, come here, Domino. And Domino's granddad is Bo Jackson. And we bred those together to get Legend here, the one in the middle. And we can do that because Bo Jackson is an excellent dog. If he had any flaws, any recognizable flaws, you can see right off. You do not need to be line breeding that. So, in other words, line breeding for exotic bullies is out. You should not be line breeding exotic bullies. You should not be inbreeding exotic bullies. Why? Because they already have recognizable flaws. That's why they're exotic. They have to have at least 2 flaws in them. They wouldn't be calling them exotic. So if you have a flaw in it and you inbreed or line breed, you're gonna double up that flaw and it's gonna pop out. So you line breed when it's a stud that is a great stud. In this case, I line bred Bo Jackson because he's the most athletic bully I've ever seen. And all of his offspring, everything on this yard now, is athletic. So, inbreeding is sibling to sibling. That means if you're in the same litter, brother to sister, sister to brother, that's inbreeding for sure. Now, when it comes to father to daughter or mother to son, I believe it's still inbreeding, depending on which breeder you are, where you're at in the world, or what breed you're dealing with. Some people don't consider that inbreed. Some people consider that just line breed, to go mother to son or from father to daughter. I consider that to be too close for what I'm trying to do because we already have a ancestor in common. We're not going that close. So for me, the half sibling is as far in as I get on inbreeding or line breeding, whichever you call it. And that's because I have an out. Now, what is outcross? There's 2 ways. One way is if you have a breed and you outcross to another breed. In other words, when they had the American Bully looking good, everything shaped right and everything, and then somebody decided, you know what, we need to make them a little bit shorter, and they decided to outcross to a French Bulldog. You know what, we need to make them shorter and wider. They went to an English Bulldog. Pearl, come on. Pearl, come on, girl. Come out of there. Legend. He has never been in the woods. Okay, come on here. So when they outcross, if you breed very tight, if you're gonna go sister to brother, stuff like that, you must outcross. So depending on what you're doing, it matters how close you get. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is, if you're breeding tight, you're going to have to outcross somewhere. Now, another form of outcrossing is when you're in the same breed, but you have different relatives. No ancestors in common, but from the same breed, and that's what we do. So for my case, I built a stud hard cut bully Drip, and Drip does not have any of the lineage of anybody else on the yard. So the offspring at the end of the game for me, I can go back to Drip and straighten it all, lock it all in. That's if I was going too tight. So it depends on who you are, what you consider too tight. Like I said, if it's just a single breeding that you're doing, then half sibling is tight enough. But if you're just doing a single breeding, whether we like it or not, some people are gonna go, with my good shoes, man. Whether we like it or not, some people are gonna go close. So you gotta watch your pedigree papers and you'll know. But what we're doing is building the line. So all the heritage behind what we started at is getting erased. We're gonna do it line by line until the whole pedigree is all hard cut bully people. And it's a line breeding because Bo Jackson is gonna be on both sides of the pedigree, on the Dame side and on the sire side. So for me, half sibling is as close as I would say that I would ever inbreed. Now, back in the day, old school breeders, especially pit bull breeding, when everything was you did all your breeding, you got everything down the way you wanted it. I mean, meaning the head size, you got the bite force that you wanted, muscle and everything that you wanted. Then you would breed the grandfather back to the granddaughter, and that would lock the traits all the way in. And with that breeding, on one side you got the grandfather, so that's a one up, and then on the other side is the granddaughter, so that's 3 steps for her. It's the same as if you was doing a half sibling breeding. It's the same thing when you look at the coefficients of it. Coefficients. It's about the same breeding. So that's why I say half sibling breeding is not too tight, because it's just the same as granddaughter to grandson. I mean, granddaughter to grandfather, or vice versa. It's the same type of breeding. Now, when you got from the same litter, the common ancestor is at the same step from the very beginning. That's tight. That's 1-1. That's tight. So when you're building a bloodline, you're gonna need all of it. You're gonna need some inbreeding, you're gonna have some line breeding, you're gonna have some outcrossing, depending on how far you go into that breeding. So it's when I say I have to go and do the math on that breeding, that's what I meant. I'm looking at coefficients and the genetics of how far I can go. Not only what I'm doing with this breeding, but what I can do in the future. Because you don't want to paint yourself in a corner. And that's what comes a lot. That's where the outcross comes in to help a lot. But like I say, some people will go father to daughter. That's just too much for me. That's the same as inbreeding is sibling to sibling. I would never do sibling to sibling, and I would never do father to daughter or mother to son. I would never do that. Now, if boy, I was sure tempted when I had Black Widow and Domino, because they would have been a perfect breed. But it's mother son, and I didn't want to go that tight. Back in the pit bull days, I'm not gonna lie, we probably would have did it. It was too good of a breeding. But in the case of the American Bully, it has already been so much genetically messed with, so much inbreeding and stuff done. You have to be careful. You have to look at your pedigrees, and you have to see the best way to go, not only with the breeding you have, but the best way to go from the history your dogs had and from the future your dogs will have. You got to know in order to start tight breeding. So I don't recommend it unless you really know what you're doing. And you really want to go do some research and really figure out coefficients. If you can't do that, I wouldn't say do it. But I've seen a lot of videos on lawn breeding, inbreeding, and it gets very, very complicated. And that's why first thing I tell people is get your dog embark tested so you'll know that you don't have any flaws that's going to genetically pop out. Because if you're line breeding or inbreeding or any of that, and you have flaws, it's going to double up. So this guy here, Domino, he's embark tested and everything, so we know he doesn't have anything that can pop out. That's why another reason that we can keep going. But before there was such thing as embark and databases, the old school breeders knew how to look at it and kept track of what dog was off of what dog. That was the main thing. You knew the lineage of your dogs. You know, you knew he was off of this, he was off of this, he was off of that. And we didn't really need the embark DNA. But now that you have the embark DNA test, go do that first before you even think about breeding, period. Do that first. And when you get through messing around, come on out the bench for the big win, man. And get you some hard cut. It's on, man.